What if I told you that the person you've been searching for your entire life could be standing right in front of you, and you almost drove past them? What if the answer to every question that ever kept you awake at night was just one conversation away? This is the story of Daniel Foster, and what happened to him will make you believe that sometimes. The universe has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most. Picture this. You're 32 years old. You're worth millions of dollars. You own luxury cars, yachts, private jets. And you're the CEO of a successful tech company. From the outside, your life looks absolutely perfect. But here's the thing about success and money. They couldn't fill every void in your heart. Daniel Foster knew this better than anyone. Despite having everything money could buy, there was a hole inside him that no amount of wealth could fill. You see, Daniel had known two things about himself for as long as he could remember. He was adopted. And somewhere out there was a woman who had given him life and then disappeared. Now, his adoptive parents, especially his father, had always been harsh about this topic. They'd look at him coldly and say things like, "She gave you up because she didn't want you. Forget the past. We gave you everything." But Daniel could never forget. Have you ever had that feeling where something just doesn't sit right with you, no matter how many people tell you to let it go? In quiet moments, Daniel would stare at himself in the mirror, wondering whose eyes he was looking into, whose blood ran through his veins. Who did he really look like? These questions haunted him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story than what he'd been told. Then something happened that changed everything. Daniel's adoptive father passed away. He became the head of the family estate. While going through his father's study, he discovered something that had been hidden for decades. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age, tucked away like a secret that was never meant to be found. Inside that envelope were documents, signatures, and something that made Daniel's heart stop. A faded photograph. In that photo was a young black woman, thin and tired, holding a newborn white baby in her arms. She had a forced smile for the camera, like someone had told her to look happy when her world was falling apart. In trembling handwriting below the photo it read, "Amara Foster, 1992, birth mother of Daniel Foster. Legal adoption record." Daniel stared at that photograph until his vision blurred. Her eyes, they looked just like his. After all these years of wondering, here was his answer, staring back at him from a piece of paper. But there was more. There was also a letter, cold and clinical like most legal documents. But the words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Due to tragic circumstances and economic hardship, the biological mother has consented to full legal adoption. No future claims permitted. Document sealed. Reason: death of husband in aviation accident. A single mother unable to provide care in unstable financial conditions. Do you understand what this meant? She hadn't abandoned him because she didn't love him. She had been forced to give him up. She was alone, grieving the loss of her husband, helpless, and struggling financially. He had been taken from her when she was at her lowest point. For weeks after this discovery, Daniel couldn't sleep. His heart burned with one overwhelming thought: I have to find her. He hired the best private investigators money could buy. He searched through old social records, hospital files, anything that might give him a clue. But it was like she had vanished into thin air. No death certificate, no trace, nothing. She was gone, or so he thought. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, fate decided to intervene in the most unexpected way. Daniel had just finished a corporate lunch meeting in the old part of the city. He was driving his bright orange supercar, cruising slowly through the narrow streets, lost in thought as usual. His mind drifted again to that photograph in the envelope. Her eyes, her face. "Where are you, Mother?" he whispered to himself. "Are you even alive?" As he approached a busy intersection, traffic began to slow down. Daniel glanced casually at the sidewalk, and that's when he saw her. An elderly black woman, thin and frail, hunched beneath the weight of a large cloth sack. Her clothes were torn, her feet were bare, and she moved slowly with her head down. Just another beggar that most people would ignore. But Daniel's heart jolted violently. Her face, those eyes. Even after decades, even weathered by time and hardship, he recognized them instantly. It was her. Adrenaline surged through his veins like electricity. Without thinking, without caring about traffic or consequences, he slammed on the brakes. His car screeched to a halt right in the middle of the street. Horns blared behind him, drivers shouted, but Daniel didn't hear any of it. He shoved open his door and leaped out onto the pavement. The old woman looked up in surprise as this young millionaire in a sleek gray suit came rushing toward her like a man possessed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel's chest was heaving, his hands were trembling. Then, in a voice choked with emotion that he'd been holding back for 32 years, he whispered, "You, ... You're my mother." The old woman blinked in confusion. Her thin body trembled under the weight of that heavy sack. She looked at this young white man standing before her, dressed in an expensive suit, eyes wide with an emotion she couldn't quite understand. "What, ... What did you say?" she stammered. Daniel's voice broke as he repeated the words that would change both their lives forever. "You re my mother. I know it. Please tell me your name." Tears welled up in the woman's tired eyes. In a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Amara." Daniel's knees went weak. It was the same name from the adoption file. With shaking hands, he quickly pulled out a folded photograph from his pocket. That old picture of her as a young woman holding a newborn baby. He held it out to her, his hands trembling so badly he could barely keep it steady. "Look," he said urgently. "It's you. It's me." Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes locked onto that faded image, and suddenly she was transported back to 1992, to the worst day of her life. Her hands flew to her mouth and a sob escaped her lips. "Oh God, no," she whispered. "It can't be." But Daniel's voice was urgent now, desperate. "Please, I've searched for you. I know what happened. I found the papers. I know the truth about my father, about what they did to you." That's when the dam broke. Gosh. Tears streamed down Amara's cheeks, and she sank to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. This wasn't the reunion either of them had ever imagined, but it was real, and it was happening right there on a busy street corner. Daniel knelt beside her, his own tears falling freely now. "You didn't abandon me," he whispered. "You saved me. You gave me life." Amara's frail hands reached up to cup his face, disbelief still written in her eyes. "They told me," she wept, "they told me I would never see you again. After your father died, I had nothing. I couldn't even feed myself, let alone a baby. I ... I had no choice." Her voice broke completely as she continued. "They forced me to sign those papers. They made me take that photo. They said it was the only way to save you." Daniel pulled her into the tightest embrace of his life. "You don't have to explain," he whispered into her ear. "You're my mother. You always will be." For what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, these two strangers who were actually family clung to each other in the middle of that street. Years of pain, grief, and longing poured out in tears. Passersby stopped and stared at the unusual sight. A wealthy young man embracing a ragged beggar woman. But Daniel didn't care what anyone thought. Finally, through his tear-filled eyes, he looked at her and said softly, "Come with me, please. Let me take care of you now." But Amara shook her head weakly. "Look at me," she said. "I'm nothing. I have nothing." "You're a rich man? You don't need me?" Daniel smiled gently through his tears. "You are everything I've needed. I have all the money in the world, but I've never had my mother." Slowly, with shaking legs, Amara allowed him to help her into that bright orange supercar. For the first time in decades, she sat on soft leather seats. Tears still falling down her weathered face as the reality of what was happening began to sink in. Daniel immediately called his assistant. "Get the best doctor, the best care, and prepare a room in my house. My mother is coming home." In the weeks that followed, Amara received medical treatment, new clothes, good food, and most importantly, love. Her strength returned little by little, and every night, Daniel would sit with her by the fireplace listening to her stories. Stories about her love for his father, about the terrible choice she was forced to make, and about all the years she spent wondering what had become of her child. One quiet evening, as they sat together in comfortable silence, Amara looked at her son, now strong, successful, and kind, and whispered, "I thought I had lost you forever. I never thought you would forgive me." Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "There's nothing to forgive," he said softly. "You gave me life, and now I can finally give you the life you deserve." And so the woman who was once forced to give up her child, the woman who was reduced to begging on the streets, now lived with dignity and love and the care of the son she had never stopped thinking about. Sometimes the people we're looking for are closer than we think. Sometimes a single moment of paying attention, of not looking away, can change everything. Daniel could have driven past that intersection like everyone else, could have ignored another beggar on the street, but he didn't, and that made all the difference. What's the most unexpected reunion story you've ever heard? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales that prove truth really is stranger than fiction.